Hey everyone, SunTide here. Hope you're all doing great. I definitely am, though I am very, very tired. I couldn't help but tell all of you guys and girls that patch 1.21 of Monster Hunter Wilds is the patch that just keeps on giving. Not only do we have a whole bunch of cool new fights with the harder monsters, not only do we have a lot of charms, not only did we have a whole lot of different buffs, different weapons, but also all of the buffs to skills have changed which armor sets are optimal or just really, really good. And that's what I want to talk to you all about today. See, I was going through my set builder and I noticed that we have a whole bunch of different builds that are actually worth building and worth trying to use, and that's even before we talk about talismans. I'll talk more about the talismans and what they mean for builds in a later video, but for now, I just want to talk about what the cool new builds are. So, for those who are new here, I'm SunTide. I make builds in a weird way. I created the whole Python script that just iterates through all the different set pieces and skills and decorations and stuff like that. I do the math so that I can use more conditional activation for different skills and assume they're all up for different times. And so in doing that, I have a cool mathematical way of finding out what the best ones are. So with that in mind, what are the best builds that we can be using in this patch? So in terms of pure raw damage, the best build actually seems to be more or less what I have equipped right now, in which case we use the AT Gamma pieces, which get you Lord Soul Tenacity. But now we have the Guardian, Ebony, Odogaron pieces, because the buffs to this skill Burst Boost. So Burst itself is a very strong skill already. So basically, if you do just one attack, you get +5 attack for the next, I think, 3 or 4 seconds, which is quite a lot of time. Burst Boost gives you an additional 8 attack, plus the 5 attack you already get from Burst. So just attacking any monster once gives you 13 raw damage. So you can see I have 242. If I just attack, I go straight up to 255. So I think I did 42 damage with that attack. The next attack, well, that was a crit, so that's 64.5. And then the next attack did 67.9. Like, I got a very significant bonus to attack just for attacking. So Burst Boost is very, very strong, and it's only a 2-piece skill, which means we can use another grip skill as well, like Guts Tenacity, which also gives a massive raw bonus. So between both of these skills, we get absolutely insane attack bonuses before counting any other skills we can equip, which is just crazy. So this build, which I'm showing on screen right now, gains around 0.4% damage over previous builds that I've been talking about. It does also lose 1 slots, but gains other skills like Divine Blessing, Stamina Surge, and Earplugs, which could very much be worth it. But there is a nice raw bonus, which is very nice, and arguably the raw bonuses are a bit easier to get, because, you know, you're always going to be attacking a monster. You should usually have that first hit of chain, of burst up. So yeah. Now the build card for this is on screen right now, so compared to previous builds that I've used the AT Gamma pieces and the Lagiacrus sets, this set gains about 0.4% damage, which is something at least, but it does lose some free 1 slots. Instead, though, we gain some other skills like Divine Blessing, Earplugs, and Stamina Surge. What's pretty interesting about this build is that the raw damage, like the raw stat itself, is very, very high, but your affinity is rather low, and because your affinity is rather low, the best way to get sharpness is actually via the Razor Sharp 3 Handicraft 1 jewel instead of Monster's Touch. So yeah, that's worth considering. The charm right now is Latent Power. Feel free to change that with whatever you want, especially if you have another really good charm. You can go Crit Boost 4 if you have a Rarity 8 charm and use your spare 3 slot to do what other skill you might want, like Mind's Eye, which is very, very strong. So yeah, and you also still have 3 free 1 slots. As I talked about in a previous video, I would strongly recommend you put 1 to recovery speed and maybe the other 2 to speed eating, if you want to have something more defensive, or you can use things like resistances. So yeah, that is going to be our general use raw option. In terms of thunder damage though, the sets are still going to be the same as we had previously. So we're still going to want to use this set, which uses 2 Lagiacrus pieces and 3 AT Radar pieces. The reason for that is that the Odogaron pieces give you -2 thunder resistance, whereas the Lagiacrus pieces give you +4 thunder resistance. So because of that, if you try and use Burst Boost, you're actually losing 12 thunder resistance, which is 48 or 4.8 thunder attack, which is fairly significant. So because of that, if you still want to use thunder damage, you still want to use the Lagiacrus weapon with Convert Thunder Resistance, then you're going to want to use the same builds we had previously. That being said, this set is still going to be optimal against quite a few different monsters actually. So Uthuna, Mizutsune, and Sergios, which are all 9-star monsters, this weapon, this build is going to be the best. You can get an extra 1 slot by using the Lagiacrus helm, but you'd lose 2 points of stamina surge. It's really up to you. For more details on that build, check out my previous video on builds. But yeah, so that's going to be the same. Now, there is one other set bonus that got massively buffed this patch, and that is Mizutsune's Prowess or Bubbly Dance. So, what Bubbly Dance does is that if you roll 3 times, you Bubble Blight yourself. And what they changed was you used to need 4 pieces to activate this skill, and now you need 2 pieces to activate this skill. And the reason why we want to get Bubbly Blighted, or Bubble Blighted, is what it's called, is that we can activate the weapon skill Slicked Blade, which you get from Mizutsune weapons, and Slicked Blade gives you 21% affinity when you're Bubble Blighted, which is very, very strong. So with that 21% affinity, that's really easy to get. This weapon actually becomes a very, very, very strong water option, especially since, you're always going to be rolling a decent amount, especially with particular weapons like the longsword, where things like the 4-side slash can activate Bubble Blight. So, yeah. There are also other things that Slicked Blade does. So if you get wet, if you're stepping in water or oil, you get an additional 9% affinity bonus. Also, if you eat for the skill Swimmer Meal, then Bubble Blight gives you 3 attack, which is all very, very nice. So all of these things help make the Mizutsune weapon very, very strong as a water option. Unfortunately, the only 9-star monster that's weak to water is New Udra, but this does become the best option against New Udra, which is very nice. And yeah, so the full build, at least for general use, is going to be the Ray Sand Helm, the Ray Sand Braces, the Ray Sand Coil, the Mizutsune Mail, and the Mizutsune Grease. However, different weapons can use different things. So for example, if I play the Longsword, I really want the skill Quick Sheath 3, and so I can lose a tiny bit of damage, but gain Quick Sheath 3 by using the Uthuna Greaves. So the build for that is on screen right now. So yeah, you have a few different options for different builds. Now, there is one other thing that Mizutsune's powers can activate though, and that is actually the other group skill, Resuscitate or Lord's Fury. And this used to be one of the best skills in the game. You used to want to use this a lot with the Gormagala set before it got nerfed. But we can activate Resuscitate again with Bubbly Dance, which is very cool. Unfortunately, Resuscitate does less damage than Guts Tenacity and is also less reliable than Guts Tenacity. However, there are some set pieces that have Resuscitate. However, there are some good set pieces that also grant the skill Resuscitate. And those are arguably the Jindahat set pieces, because they also have a really good set bonus in Bind Encounter. So Bind Encounter gives you a massive raw bonus, so 25 raw under particular conditions, and that's being webbed, being frost blighted, being pinned, or activating a power clash. So there are a few different ways you can get this massive attack bonus for a pretty long duration. Now, unfortunately, the only monster that is water weak and can activate Bind Encounter fairly easily is Lagiacrus. And Lagiacrus is not a very difficult monster, but technically, this is a very funny anti-Lagiacrus set. Oh, and in case you missed it in a previous video, there is a very impressive secret tech you can do with an emote to activate Slicked Blade. So you can see right now I have 35% affinity. If I use the new emote, Water Gun, and then I spray my Palico, who is there, hi, itch, come to me, you will annoy it, eventually, and then it will spray you with its Water Gun and give you the 9% affinity from Slicked Blade. So that is one option to activate Slicked Blade or Swimmer without actually being near water. Very useful, as you can see. But yeah, with that being said, the summary conclusion of this video. So the Lagiacrus weapons are still very strong as a thunder weapon against the monsters that are weak to thunder, like Uthuna, Mizutsune, and Sergios. The buffs to Bubbly Dance have made Mizutsune weapons very strong against an Udra. However, your best general build now is going to use Burst Boost and the Ebony Odogaron set to get you a tiny bit more raw than we had before. So yeah, with that being said, I'd like to thank all of you so much for watching. Thanks especially to Alexander Bowers, who is in my highest Patreon tier. And yeah, hope to see you all next one. Bye.